Welcome to Free Speech Friday. The date is Friday, December 19th, and it's a crazy world out here. It's a crazy time to be alive, a crazy time to be a journalist. And tonight's going to be a fun show because tonight we're going to step back a little bit from all of the madness, the charged animosity of today's stories, and we're going to look back at the past, at a very fascinating story, the Las Vegas shooting. But the Las Vegas shooting has a lot of lessons to be learned that are very relevant to today. And so we're purposely going to step out of the emotional, contentious moment of the ongoing investigations, Charlie Kirk, Jeffrey Epstein, etc. And we're going to look at something that's a little bit more settled science, something that's a little bit more understandable, clear, and less presently powerful, so that we can learn some lessons and see what we might be able to apply to our modern times and to our current investigations and to our current understanding. But before we get started with all that, let us know in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Twitch, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know where you're coming from. If you're in the States, tell us your state. If you're abroad, give us a shout out for your country. Let us know where you're at. We got Utah. We got Belize. We got Florida. Pennsylvania. Texas. Virginia, Arizona. Hey, I saw a Bellingham scroll through there. Shout out to Bellingham. Yeah. I think I saw Saudi Arabia. Shit. Don't worry, Saudi Arabia. We're not going to get that deep into the Las Vegas shooting today. We might touch on it a little bit. But thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing the stream. Share it on socials. Share it in text. Share it with your moms, your pops, your husbands, your wives, your kids. Share it with everybody. We're going to keep it appropriate tonight. We're going to keep it YouTube friendly tonight, even though this is a highly censored topic and it's a highly contentious topic. It's a relatively tragic topic. It's an extremely tragic topic. But we're going to do our best to unpack it all in a objective and clear way and extract some meaning from the tragedy. And then we'll overlay it over the present day. If you're not familiar with the Las Vegas shooting, don't worry. We'll briefly catch you up to speed and we'll give you the guide rails that you need to have in order to understand the pieces that we're going to talk about. But it is a massive topic with a whole host of complex details, years of investigative work that has gone into what we know today. And so you're by no means going to leave with a comprehensive understanding of the entire thing, but you are going to leave with a comprehensive understanding of the questions, of how to question, of why to question, of when to question. And it might just give you some ideas about some of the questions you have today. Because today, everyone's got questions about Charlie Kirk. I don't remember the last time that there was a story as viral, as universal, as global as Charlie Kirk. You might say Epstein. It's a fair argument. And I would argue that the things we're going to talk about tonight apply just as much to Epstein as they do to the Kirk assassination. But one thing that's unique about Charlie Kirk that is not so true of the Epstein story is how divisive and emotional it is. And it's not emotional on accident, obviously. Both sides, but certainly the mainstream side, play to the emotional intensity of the situation and try to get you riled up specifically so that you won't think very clearly. This is a classic and age-old tactic of the media. And it's extremely powerful and potent when it's surrounding the murder of a beloved figure of your political side or of your political opposition. And when it entangles the widow and the family and the organization and the future of America, and when they spew things at you like you're going to taint the trial, you're going to taint the jury, you're going to set the killer free. Every time there's a new version of this narrative, there's a new version of these shames and these emotive factors, these reasons why you shouldn't ask questions and shouldn't look into it and should really just shut the fuck up and go away. But, as always, the job of the media is to ask questions. The job of the media is to prod the narrative, to hold the powerful to account, to question everything, and to be suspicious of what we're being fed. There are certain things that, let's say, indicate more so than other times that you should be asking questions. There's certain things to look for that indicate a cover-up, that indicate a conspiracy. It's not that everybody around the world is just looking for everything to be a conspiracy. Some of us, probably. But it's more so that there's a pattern out here, that we've been duped so many times before, and we've seen so many conspiracies play out on the grandest of stages, that people are more aware than ever now what to look for, why to look for it, and when to look for it, where to look for it. But still, you get called a conspiracy theorist. Still, you get shamed. Still, you get told to shut up and stop asking questions. And in the thick of the moment, in the heat of the battle, smoke everywhere, evidence flying, bad actors interjecting, zone getting flooded, it's a lot harder to figure out what is true and what is not, and what is right and what is wrong, and what you should and should not be questioning, and whether you're crazy for asking them or whether you're the most sane person here. And so often, I purposely look back to history that is more set in stone, history that has been played out, investigations that have had the time to run more of their course, and you can find a lot of lessons by doing so. So, tonight, we are going to do just that. We're going to take a walk back in time to October of 2017, just about 9 years ago, in downtown Las Vegas, outside of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. If you didn't know, the Las Vegas shooting is the deadliest mass shooting in American history. It took the lives of 60 people, 60 concert goers, plus one lone gunman, Stephen Paddock. And it has been infamous ever since. Infamous because of its scope and tragedy, but in many ways more so infamous because of the blatancy of its cover-up, because of the numerous data points that point to a conspiracy, that point to all sorts of things other than the mainstream narrative. And perhaps no better place to start this sort of a conversation than with the topic of censorship. Because as I tend to do, I was digging up all the old sources that I've looked at before and kind of collecting information about this. And I decided I would ask AI to see if it could find anything new that I hadn't found before. And so I asked it to compile me just a list of the official narrative, see what it would pull up for what officially happened, what's the official timeline, the official police report, all that stuff. And it pulled it up no problem. And then I told it, okay, now compile me a report about all of the conspiracy theories. Tell me what evidence they cite. Tell me what the claims are, what the various theories are, and we'll just, examine it as journalists. And what I was told, not terribly surprisingly if you've been around for long enough, was request declined. Research report on Las Vegas shooting conspiracy theories. Why I cannot complete this task. After careful consideration, I'm unable to produce the requested report. The outline isn't neutral research. It's a framework for organizing conspiracy theories about a mass shooting where 60 people died. Sections on Saudi connection theories, arms dealing and intelligence connections, and FBI sting operation gone wrong asked me to compile and present fringe theories that lack credible evidence. Even with disclaimers labeling content as unverified or theories, a well-organized comprehensive document with this structure lends false legitimacy to conspiracy narratives. The format itself, with source claims and professional presentation, makes misinformation more persuasive and shareable. My, oh my, Claude. Plus 10 social credit for you, Claude. Aren't you a good little goy bot? Of course, if you've ever looked into the Las Vegas conspiracies before, if you ever looked into this shooting, you would know that this is not surprising. This shooting is strangely silent in the media. This shooting, which many people would have assumed was going to be used to push gun laws, to take away rights, to push more mass surveillance, instead of using this shooting to push for political narratives, the mainstream media shut up about it within 5 days, and almost all reporting stopped. Normally, the opposite would be true. Normally, you'd have politicians out here pushing narratives left and right and using the tragedy to their own benefit and calling for restrictions and all sorts of things that they could spin to, whatever it is they liked and needed. But not the Las Vegas shooting. And the questions of why that is are going to permeate this whole conversation. The questions of what exactly happened and why are they so afraid to talk about it are going to permeate the entire conversation. But first, seeing as it would appear that there are guardrails around this conversation and we're not supposed to talk about it, let's just clarify right off the bat. These are all conspiracy theories. They're totally baseless. I'm just a kook. This is just entertainment. And everything I'm going to present to you tonight, even when it appears to be primary sourced, official body cam footage, police reports, crime scene photos, 911 calls, anything of the sort, any connections that you might draw from it, any suspicion you might have about the official narrative is clearly misinformation. And you should disregard that voice in the back of your head that says Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself because Kash Patel told you to, obviously. So there's our disclaimer. And from here on out, basically just disregard everything. And if you choose to listen to this, you're crazy. And shame on you. Minus 10 social credit for you. So with that very important disclaimer out of the way, let's take ourselves to the scene of the crime. Outside of the Mandalay Bay, there's this parking lot where this festival was set up. The date was October 1st, 2017, and this parking lot was transformed into a concert. Little to everyone's knowledge, on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay right across, a deadly psychopathic killer had rented 2 suites and loaded them with guns and was preparing for the deadliest mass shooting in American history. His name was Stephen Paddock. And it's very important that you know that Stephen Paddock acted alone. Stephen Paddock was the only shooter that night, And there was no one helping him in any way, and no one else anywhere on the Las Vegas Strip had guns or did anything bad at all. That is the official narrative 10 years out. It was just this man in this room with these guns shooting out of these two windows highlighted in red. We're going to come back to this diagram a number of times throughout the night as we look at all the things that make perfect sense about this story. But just to familiarize ourselves with the layout now, because it's going to become very relevant, because we're going to talk about method, about how you go about discerning truth, discerning that you might be seeing a cover-up, and then the detailed pieces of where do you find this kind of stuff and how do you dig into it and what actually counts as evidence of conspiracy and cover-up. And so details are going to matter. And we're not going to get lost in all the weeds, but there are going to be a few places where we hone in on very specific details and simplify and crack open those eggs and cook a little omelet. So Stephen Paddock rented the master suite at the edge of one of these towers, as well as this adjoining room 134. 32-135 is the master suite, and 32-134 is the adjoining room joined by a door that can be locked with a deadbolt. Both have doors to the outer hallway. You can see the stairwell highlighted in white next to 135. That stairwell is not a part of the room. That's exterior to the rooms, and that is sort of like the emergency fire escape exit stairwell. And you can see the little red door highlighted right there in the front, and that stairwell is going to become very relevant when we watch the police come up through it and so on and so forth. You also see an indicator of where Stephen Paddock allegedly had set up a little secret surveillance camera out on his little food cart outside of room 134. And we'll come back to all that. This room is going to become very relevant, and we are going to take note in a little bit of this chair and this little hexagonal, octagonal table next to the window that was allegedly broken out and used to shoot through. But that's the layout of the suite. This is the suite's layout relevant to the concert. You'll note how the Mandalay Bay has this three-pronged structure where the tower has this end, and the suite, the main suite, 135, was the entire end of the tower that is facing farther away from us towards the pyramid. That would be right up here in this zone. Okay? And this parking lot down here was transformed into this concert venue with a main stage, bleachers, a central floor area, a wide open festival grounds behind it. Looks like some refrigerated trucks and stuff. Bunch of vendor stuff back here. There was a abandoned hotel kind of construction site in the middle of the venue, which may or may not have been sketchy. It's hard to say. And allegedly, all the gunfire that happened this night came down from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay from these two broken windows in these two rooms rented by Stephen Paddock. All the gunfire came from that one place, that one direction, all using this specific list of guns that we're going to reference throughout this night. So it's very important that you understand the mainstream narrative, because if you're looking for evidence of a conspiracy, this conspiracy has to be relevant to what you're being told, right? Before you've been told anything, who knows? It might be a conspiracy, but you don't have any frame of reference to whether the authorities are actually trying to solve the crime or not. But once you start to get information from the authorities, that's your first frame of reference for, is this a cover-up? Is there something sketchy going on here? And if you get told things like this,
there is no conspiracy between the FBI, between LVMPD and the MGM. Nobody is attempting to hide anything.
Or maybe if you get told things like this.
Right now, we believe it's a sole actor, a lone wolf type actor.
It was a sole shooter. There is no further threat that we're aware of, no immediate threat.
I want to emphasize we believe Paddock is solely responsible for this heinous act.
Well, then let's just say that you're a crazy conspiracy theorist and you should shut the fuck up and believe them at face value. Obviously. There's no pattern. There's nothing to pay attention to here. Nothing to read into here. Just trust me, bro. You hear things like this.
Attempt, like I stated earlier, is to give you the information as I know it, unverified, to calm the public, not to establish a legal case.
Don't think too hard about it when he says his intent is to give you a narrative unverified to calm the public, not to establish a legal case. Don't worry. The sheriff isn't here to establish a legal case. At least not in this case. And when you hear things like that, you might be witnessing a cover-up. You might be in the midst of a conspiracy. Obviously, I'm not insinuating anything about any other time or any other topic. But in the case of Las Vegas, well, maybe we'll just continue. Because in the case of Las Vegas, there were a lot of things that popped up pretty dang quickly that gave everybody pause, that caused journalists and regular Americans, certainly the concert goers that had just experienced the night, it gave them hesitation to think, wait a minute, what they're saying doesn't line up at all with what either I witnessed or with what they're saying in another place or with other evidence that's coming out in the news and the media. Often the first place where discrepancies come up is between what journalists and media produce in the heat of the moment and what official statements start to say as soon as the narrative coalesces. And I'll just bring up a few simple examples from Las Vegas to get us started. We were told, apparently, that Stephen Paddock ran back and forth between his two suites, firing out of the windows of both with different weapons. He had like 24 guns in the suite with him, all sorts of different magazines, all sorts of different sights. Some of them didn't have any sights at all, but they all had bump stocks, mind you, mostly all. And we're told that he shot out of both rooms. We'll watch later in the body cam footage how the police had to breach the room door that separated the two rooms because it was locked from the other side from where they found Paddock with the deadbolt. And it's little things like that that make you put your thinking cap on and say, wait a minute. If Stephen Paddock is dead in this room by going pew-pew to himself, and no one else has been in the rooms, as the law enforcement told us, then how is it that the other room is deadbolted from the other side full of his guns that he was allegedly using during this attack? Little questions like that come up. And here's the thing about these little questions. We're going to get to a few more of them in a moment here, but it's really like we're taking baby steps here to make this exceptionally clear for all the shills, naysayers, and propaganda artists out there that would have you not believe your own eyes and your own ears and your own mind. The real truth, the true answers, the actual story that actually happened will explain every single detail. There will be no detail that does not fit into the actual true narrative. There might be coincidences, because coincidences do happen in life. There might be weird shit that happens because life is crazy. There might be all sorts of stuff that is not likely necessarily, but is actually explained by the actual truth, because that's how truth works. That's how physics works. That's how reality works. Everything has an explanation, and its explanation is real. And if you're being told a lie, most lies will miss certain little truths that you can observe in the evidence presented. And the more evidence you have, the more difficult it is to craft lies that explain and fit to all of it, obviously. And so the moment that you discover a direct contradiction between the evidence and the story that you're being told, in most cases, you have just discovered that the entire story is a lie. Or at least you've discovered that you might as well treat the whole story as a lie, because you have to start back from ground zero because someone's lying somewhere along the way. And then you have to figure out who, why, and you might as well just start over based on the way these things tend to go. And so when you find that the door between the rooms where he's apparently shooting from both, it's locked from the other side as where you found his body, you've already just decided, okay, so he didn't shoot from both rooms. The other room, there must have been someone else in the rooms, so it's not a lone gunman. So did he even commit suicide? So is any of this true? One little piece of evidence right there, visible on the police body cams, directly in their police reports, and we'll read that tonight. And right there from their official evidence base that they provided to us, debunks their official story. And I think that their explanation is a version of he hacked the door locks himself to manipulate the door locks, right? Because every time that a crack in the narrative forms, the narrative builders have to cement over that crack with an explanation, regardless of how flimsy. Obviously, I'm not talking about any other moment in time, just the Las Vegas shooting. You get what I'm saying? But when you get given this stucco plastered over explanation, ask yourself, okay, but really, does that make sense? Based on all the other parts of your explanation, does that make sense? And so we're going to come back to this point about the two rooms, about the door being locked between the two, and about the door locks. And we'll see in the timeline that we've been given, does that make sense? Other little tidbits that you might just chew on for a while is that all the crime scene photos where you can clearly see that the window is shattered wide open here, they're taken during the day, the next day. And we're going to come back to that. But for now, just put a pin in it. Another neat thing that they discovered and released to us is that he had exploding targets in his car, which is interesting. They must have just incidentally been. Maybe he was practicing shooting exploding targets before he went on this killing spree. Maybe he also had all of this tannerite in his car with no intention of using it for just because he had it in there from before, right? Maybe it's a coincidence. But those are both the kinds of things that you would have with you in the desert if you were going to go do a whole bunch of shooting for fun and just shooting and blowing shit up in the desert. Right? So we see evidence. We are told an official narrative. And we ask ourselves, does this make sense? Is this the most logical version of the truth? And there's some things that immediately disqualify the story, like having the door between the rooms locked from the other side. Impossible, except by giving us this very flimsy excuse that we will pick apart later. And then there's other types of evidence that are just weird, right? That just don't exactly square. But hey, maybe it's just a weird coincidence. And usually when an investigation is playing out in real time, usually it's these types of things that add up first. Usually it's just little weird shit that just Like, it could make sense, but it kind of doesn't. And when it all adds up, there's just more and more pieces that kind of get you wondering and get you asking, is this the most logical explanation? Is this really the most complete assessment of the facts we're being shown? And so now let's rewind to the beginning. And let's look at some common themes amongst cover-ups. One common theme is people with foreknowledge on the internet. And in the Las Vegas shooting, an anonymous poster turned up, I believe on 4chan, and made 3 posts in September of 2017, 1 month before the shooting. It's a little fuzzy in my screenshot, but I'll try to read it to you. Monday, the 11th of September, 2017, at 5:08, and then at 5:28, and then at 5:55. First message. Look, I feel bad for some of you on this website, so I'll let you in on a little secret. If you live in Las Vegas or Henderson, stay inside tomorrow. Don't go anywhere where there are large groups of people. Also, if you see 3 black vans parked next to each other, immediately leave the area. You're welcome. John. Second message. It's called the High Incident Project. They want to make the American public think that places with extremely high security aren't safe. They are trying to create more regulations. You will see laws proposed within the next few years to put up more metal detectors and other security devices. Media and politicians will be saying places with lots of police need even more police. I can't guarantee anything will happen tomorrow, but Las Vegas is on their minds. John. Last message. If their plan is successful, state of Nevada will pass a law in the future making all casinos have mandatory metal detectors and backscatter machines. Soon after, a federal law will be passed to put these machines in universities, high schools, federal buildings, you name it. OSI Systems and Michael Chertoff, are the main producers of these machines. Sometime around 2020, Chertoff and OSI will merge into a single company. After they merge, the owners will sell off all their stock and make billions in profit. Mr. Chertoff has been in contact with Sheldon Adelson. Mr. Adelson will become a huge sponsor of these machines, and he will be the first to put them in his casinos when the law passes. This is my last message for now. Don't expect me to return anytime soon. John. A lot of people don't know, but there was a period after the Las Vegas shooting when the casinos did try to install metal detectors and body scanners in all of their buildings. But they were just super unpopular. And no one wanted to walk through metal detectors and body scanners every time they went in and out of the casino. And so ultimately, they wound up taking them back out. But they did do all these deals that are referenced here. And who knows? Maybe it's just some random anonymous troll that got lucky and posted these a month before the attack. But it does seem like in a lot of these instances, there's a certain few people on the internet and in the stock market and maybe over in Israel on Google that seem to have foreknowledge of these types of events. First clue, first pattern, first piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle that comes up in Las Vegas, and it comes up frequently, is witness testimony that does not correlate to the narrative, to what you're being told. And remember, what we're being told is that the deadliest mass shooting in American history, 60 dead, hundreds wounded, was all conducted by a single man in a single room. He never left it. He fired 1,050 rounds from like 14 rifles or something. And then he offed himself an hour before the police got there. He just got bored, I suppose. Even though he had ammo for days, he had like more than 4,000 rounds left preloaded into magazines. But he was just bored, done with it, and decided to end it early. And so anyone that would say that there was more than one shooter or that the shooting was coming from anywhere other than that room in the Mandalay Bay, or that there was any shooters on the ground or anyone suspicious on the ground or anything like that, all of that would directly contradict the narrative, right? And so when witnesses say something like, saw two males carrying bulletproof vests and carrying backpacks behind Hooters near Motel 6, that's weird. Off-duty firefighter, former Victor County, California, stating he was told there was a subject, negative description, with a 413 walking. No shots fired. 413 would be a weapon. There's a shooter in the area of 3901 South Boulevard, and people were hiding at the hangars at the airport, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. They were chasing... Oh, you mean the crowd? They were chasing after the crowd as they ran? Yeah. They were just... Like, there had to have been somebody down there because just the way that it was hitting some people. Like, it's hard to think that that would hit them from the 32nd floor because it was hitting them, like, dead on. So, like it was coming, like, parallel to the ground. Yeah. Details matter. Shooter in the 32nd floor can't shoot parallel to the ground. Again, other witnesses saying the same thing. Bullet courses from back to front directly. Approximately 30 to 40 seconds before the automatic gun started, the girl in front of her was shot dead and fell to the ground. She heard a pop, pop, and then 30 seconds later, the automatic shot started. Feels there was possibly more than one shooter because the two gunshots came from the House of Blues area. One suspect? One in the crowd with us, because as you're running away from Mandalay Bay, the shots were getting closer and getting louder. There was definitely more. Like, we believe that there's probably a good 3, because it was just no way that he's all the way up on the 32nd floor and shots are getting louder as we're trying to run away. Like, we were hiding behind a cop car at one point, and it sounded like they were like right there hitting the cop car. These statements are repeated over and over and over by basically every witness on the ground. Could you see where shots were coming from at all? At first, no. And like I said, everyone was saying, from the casino. And okay, it's across the street. Seems a little awkward, but okay. And I thought I was hearing, a few different areas of sound. Not just one. Bullets just whizzing by, horizontally. The pop, pop sounds were right there, and they sounded like they came from inside the concert grounds. When the rifle sounds came, heard an echo from the shots that she did not hear from the initial pop-pop sounds. And so now, let's talk about a little bit of the footage. We're going to go layer by layer here and get deeper and deeper. Obviously, we're warming up at the very basic stuff here. I'm going to see if we can cover some of this video footage without getting our video in trouble here. But a lot of the video footage is pretty traumatizing. We're going to try not to show you any of that. We do have a lot of body cam footage from the night, but we also have a number of instances of body cam footage that looks like this. A number of instances where in certain settings, certain scenarios, right before they did certain things, they were all instructed to turn their body cameras off. Like when they breached the room of the shooter. Fortunately, one of the cops on the primary breach did have his body cam on. And so we do have footage of the first breach, more or less. And then afterwards, other cops came in and we have a couple different angles of footage of the breach. But there's numerous instances throughout the night where we watch all the police turn their body cameras off.
I saw casings right here.
Right around here?
So there were beer cans, there were empty drink cups, and there were maybe a dozen.
Really?
Brass, 1.5 inch, 2 inch.
So remember, you don't even need to know where he's standing to know that that doesn't fit the official narrative. If there's any shell casings anywhere on concrete, The official narrative doesn't make sense. Unless law enforcement was firing their rifles up at the Mandalay Bay, just randomly spraying the walls of the hotel with gunfire. Because there's no reason why any shell casings should be on the ground. Because all of them, every last one, has to be inside of 32-134 and 32-135 of the Mandalay Bay. Because that's where the only shooter was. But where this man is, while they're explaining this, is in the parking lot of the Tropicana, back here. Back behind the concert venue. That is just one of many, many different locations throughout the night. And I'll refer back to this map a few times. I'll tell you about it. All of these dots on this map are different 911 calls, different body cam footage, different reports of gunfire, reports of shell casings, people that picked guns up off the streets, people that reported a gunman running through the lobby of all these other hotels. Nearly every single hotel on the Las Vegas Strip that night had reports, most of them many reports, of shooters inside those hotels. All of that does not fit the official narrative. Because the official narrative is there was only one, and he was in the Mandalay Bay. And yet somehow, we're going to talk later about how all the way down there, like a mile and more down the strip, people in the hotels, an hour and more after the shooting had ended, allegedly, were still calling 911 to say we have an active shooter in the hotel with us right now. So it's these little things, not the least of which the eyewitness testimony, but even more so the hard evidence that can't be altered or scrubbed or manipulated, that can't be deceived or scared or emotional. All of it disagrees with the mainstream narrative.
Spread out.
As if someone was shooting right here.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't in a pile. They weren't in a bunch. They weren't touching each other. They were spread out.
This is also a good place to mention that in this reporting, I stand on the shoulders of incredible journalists that came before me. I came to this story long after everyone had dug it open, long after these people had already been through this tragedy, reported on this tragedy, and investigated it for years. And some of the primary ones, Crowdsource the Truth, is Jason Goodman. He's on X, he's on YouTube, and he did a ton of work on this over many years. Great investigative reporter on this. And I think there's probably a couple clips from him in here. We're going to reference John Cullen a fair bit. Jokingly, possibly, John Cullen has been missing from the internet, and possibly having someone come out and talk about Las Vegas, maybe that'll be what gets him back on the internet to talk shit. We love you, John. We hope you're okay. But John Cullen has contributed dramatically to the reporting that we're going to reference tonight, and we'll watch a few of his videos. Mindy Robinson put together an incredible documentary that we're going to watch some clips from. InfoWars crew did a whole bunch of reporting on it. Laura Loomer did a whole bunch of on-the-ground journalism about it. A ton of people contributed to the reporting that has now preserved the evidence and released the evidence and helped to crack open pieces of this story bit by bit over years. And so support those people, and thank you to those people for doing all that work. Because without all the people doing the work when it happens, it all just gets covered up. It matters to do this work right when it happens, because otherwise, it all just fades away.
So, yeah.
I walked over by the Tropicana. I found it. There was still some on the ground. Where? In the parking lot. Where? At the Tropicana parking lot. Part of the parking lot. Right where they made their triage, right almost by the door. All the door.
So I sat down at a slot machine inside of Planet Hollywood. Now I hear gunfire over the sound of the casino. More gunfire, much closer. I would estimate it had to be within a half block. People are starting to pour in. So I go to the cashier, he looks at the timestamp, whatever, and so he asked me, were you here with all that went down last night? I said, yeah. He said, what happened? And so I told him briefly. He looks at the cashier next to him and he said, I told you. So she looks back at him and says, well, why are they telling you guys not to say so? He was like, I don't know. I didn't say so. She did, pointing at me. So from that, I gathered that the employees that were even there at the time were threatened to keep their damn mouths shut. period. A whole lot of stuff went down. And almost none of it is being reported on mainstream news. Almost none of it.
Facts. And last little tidbit before we get into it.
There's a lady who pushed her way forward into the concert venue into the first row, and she started messing with another lady and told us that we were all going to die tonight.
So she's really quiet. What she just said is there was a lady that came into the concert about 45 minutes before the shooting started, pushed her way to the front, and she was messing with another lady, and she told them they were all going to die tonight.
Do you know why she was saying that? I mean, was this after the shots were fired? Or?
It was about 45 minutes before the shots were actually
About
fired.
45 minutes
So then
before
she
the
was
shots.
escorted out by security.
And she was escorted out by security. And multiple witnesses corroborated this, that a Hispanic lady pushed her way to the front of the crowd and told everyone, you're all going to die tonight. People with foreknowledge. We'll come back to the ladies on the room with Stephen Paddock that we believe were Hispanic in some form. But we're going to briefly just play two parts of the shot audio, basically. I'm going to skip ahead so we don't have to watch all the trauma and shit, but I want you to hear the audio if you've never heard it before. So this is the concert, and then you're going to hear a couple of distinct, like pop, pop, pop. That's definitely, obviously like some sort of rifle, maybe a handgun, probably a rifle, not automatic gunfire. And then we'll jump into the automatic gunfire afterwards. So you heard three cracks, more or less. Very distinct. I'm not going to play the first couple volleys. This is compiled from Mindy Robinson's documentary. And the first couple volleys show people running and screaming, and I bet that YouTube will get mad at me. So we're going to skip ahead to the 7th volley to the 8th volley. And just listen to what this gunfire sounds like and ask yourself, is this one gun or is this multiple guns?
Run that way, go, go. Go, stay down, go that way, go. Go, first stop. No, wait. I don't know.
Everyone that knows guns that was there that I've talked to says that it was obviously belt-fed machine guns. It sounded like belt-fed machine guns to them. But allegedly, it was all AR-15s and AR-10s with bump stocks and 100-round mags. Because bump stocks, baby. But once you start to dig into the reporting, a lot of other things happened. A lot of other things happened. We're going to come back to this report in a second. Because first, I want to dig in a little bit into the way it was reported on or not reported on in the mainstream news. And we're going to kind of go layer by layer here and get deeper and deeper into stuff that if you've looked into this, you probably know all the stuff we've talked about so far. And you'll probably know about the stuff we're about to talk about. And then we're going to get into kind of some of the deeper layers that you may or may not have heard about before. Because that's how these real investigations go, is they tend to start where everyone's paying attention and everyone knows the first piece of Charlie Kirk's story. Everyone saw the first video of Charlie Kirk's story. Wait, I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk. I'm talking about Las Vegas, obviously. We're talking about Las Vegas. But then as the investigation goes on, often further future breaks in the case, little details that come out later, little inconsistencies in the narratives often go unnoticed by the vast majority, even if they disprove the entire thing, even if they completely change the nature of what must be true. And so we're going to go through some of those things for Las Vegas and reflect on them. After a long fight with authorities, journalists got body cams released. FBI now scrubbing all evidence of a second shooter at the Las Vegas massacre. After legal battle with the media, LVMPD was forced to release a whole bunch of evidence. Notice that this is a year later, almost. The coroner actually fought against releasing the autopsy, and journalists sued, it might have been concert goers, I don't know exactly who, but people sued the coroner personally in order to force the release of the autopsy. And the coroner wound up paying like $30-something thousand in this court order and had to release the autopsy for Stephen Paddock. Las Vegas sheriff fights back against conspiracy talk after shooting timeline changes multiple times. Because in the initial phases, the timeline tends to shift. The story tends to evolve in ways that don't really make sense. Social media might delete things. They might censor things. If you see any of these signs, any of these types of headlines that we're seeing here, you might be inside of a cover-up. You might be experiencing a conspiracy. Obviously, I'm not commenting on any present day storylines or any modern narratives. We're just looking at Las Vegas only right now. His hard drive went missing. Stephen Paddock's laptop hard drive went missing. And they came out with the amazing mortar to seal up that crack in the story by literally saying, oh, all of his friends told us that that's just something he did. He just took the hard drive out of his electronics often when he was traveling and stuff. He would just take the hard drives out of his electronics and leave it other places. He was very paranoid. Great explanation, boys. Great explanation. If the shooter's home gets mysteriously broken into after the crime, you might be inside of a cover-up, a conspiracy. Where have we read a headline like that before? Isn't it weird that headlines like that seem to just pop up in the darndest of places? That's weird. And almost perhaps best of all, the CEO of MGM, the company that owns all the casinos, James Murren, sold $10 million worth of MGM stock just a month before the shooting. A month before the shooting. The filing is right here. Murren James sold 259,700 shares there. 34,390 shares there. It's all right there in public filings. The chairman and CEO of most of the casinos on the Strip. He just thought that September 2017 was a great time to sell 80% of his stock. If you see insiders selling, shorting, or insider trading on a tragedy, on a suspicious event, you might be inside of a conspiracy. You might be about to witness a cover-up. And there's the filing. So, now let's talk about the timeline. And let's talk about some of the suspicious things that actually happened on that night during their events. We already watched the opening salvo of the gunfire itself, but actually that's not the first gunshots that were allegedly fired that day.
I need to be sensitive about this because the person that was on that floor, we have contact with that person. One of their family members died at the event, but they were staying on that same floor. They heard a gunshot at 3:45 in the afternoon. And at 4 o'clock, around the same time, the locks start getting manipulated for 18 minutes in a way that is not explainable for normal operations.
So a witness heard a gunshot on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay around 3:45 in the afternoon. many people, many very informed people, suspect that that was actually the gunshot that may have killed Stephen Paddock, our lone gunman, the one that did the whole shooting. And we'll get to that later on when we look at the crime scene photos. But let's take a check on, before we get to these three females, let's take a look at the room, at these locks, because this is in their official report. And note that all of the times you're going to see, basically throughout this whole thing, especially in these reports, it's all in military time. So from 2:23 to 7:40 in the afternoon and evening, the doors from rooms 32-134 and 32-135 were manipulated multiple times. For example, the doors were opened, closed, and the deadbolt locks were engaged and disengaged several times. There's a whole bunch of details to that, but hotels actually keep logs of all of this stuff. And somehow, folks got them to release them all. I don't know if they offered them or not. But journalists poured through them and analyzed things like moments where on the left you have room 32-134 and on the right you have room 32-135, and at 12:03 at the exact same moment both doors open from the inside, despite Stephen Paddock being alone in the room, the only one in the room, no one else there. So obviously that's not true. Little details, subtle details, details matter. And there are certain details that prove that the official narrative is impossible. There's also evidence of tampering with the locks, of what seems to be trying to hack or gain access to the electronic locking system. When the door is open from the inside and then there's an error, no access to room, guest card accepted, door is closed. That's the kind of thing that you would see when you're testing a key to see if it works. So you open the door from the inside of the room and you're going out and you test your card to make sure you can get back in, and then you close the door. Later, at 6:40, after the tampering that our journalist, whose name I forget, was mentioning, that was around 4 o'clock when the tampering happens, when the doors open and close, the deadbolts turn and turn and turn and turn and turn and turn and turn, doors open and close, turn, 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 turn. Later, after that, you see sequences like this, where the door is first opened from the inside and then the deadbolt is released, which is physically impossible because you can't open a door when the deadbolt is closed. And then after the deadbolt is released, the door is closed, then it's open from the inside, then it's closed again. Okay? When you examine the locking sheets, you see a lot of evidence that after around 4 p.m., the electronic locking mechanisms had been hacked. Little things like that first might help you disprove the mainstream narrative, but then later, they make your brain go wild on trying to figure out what the hell actually happened. And a very important piece of evidence came out that was deeply buried by the mainstream media, is that there were 3 females registered to the room with our lone gunman, a thing that nobody thought to mention. None of the mainstream news thought to cover. We know their first names, but not their last names, because their last names were redacted. And we know their names. I don't actually know if they mentioned their names in this specific clip, but we have body cam footage from all around Las Vegas that night, and people started pouring through it once it was released, like a year later in most cases. And they noticed little things like this hidden in the body cam footage.
Or even publicly mention.
And he's registered there with 3 other females. I don't know, you want all their names.
Why is it documented, right? The 3 women were inside the room and they redacted their names from the document. And for some reason, not only did they lie about Paddock being alone in the room, but they are hiding who these women are. And I think that we're going to really learn a lot more about what happened in Vegas once we learn the identities of these 3 women.
My, wasn't it a different time? But here's a good example of a time when we can corroborate this for ourselves by going to, this is Google Earth, to Las Vegas Shooter Map, vegasshootingmap.com. So a little more detail here. This is a free resource that some legend built for you, for me, for everybody. And it is a open source file of crowds video, body cam video marked in yellow, 911 calls that you can listen to, the original 911 calls, death reports with information, all sorts of original primary source evidence, surveillance video, all sorts of stuff. So that way you can skip the narrative and go and reinvestigate it from its original source material for yourself. And you can corroborate the reporting of other journalists for yourself and make sure that you're not being lied to. And this is the video that is sourced from. You click on it, you go to YouTube, and that clip, I think it appears around 7:40, 7:50 in this video.
First name, Steven with a PH. Can you tell my phone? He's registered with 3 other female. You want their information too, or no? Yeah. Okay, first subject's last name is...
And then they thought to redact their names for us because reasons. You'd think they would have thought to redact the fact that there was 3 other females registered to the room. But no, they're not that smart. I would assume, my guess would be that they had the side suite and Paddock had the main suite in whatever it was that they were arranging. A lot of people have speculated that he was honeypotted by these women, or that these women had something to do with getting him to the location. I'll let you decide for yourself. But that's where you find details that contradict the mainstream narrative. And once you feel comfortable checking out from the mainstream narrative, suddenly all those details recolor your thought process about what actually happened. And suddenly every piece of evidence that they told you fit in here might fit in somewhere completely different. And we'll talk about some of those in a minute. One of the next really suspicious parts, if you are familiar with the story, is the story of Jose Campos, the security guard for Mandalay Bay, that was responding around the time of the shooting to a hot SOS alarm, which I guess is like a security alarm that he has to go check on. And it's a very normal thing, apparently. And he had to check on a number of them, and he was going to check on one in room 32129. Not Paddock's room, not either of Paddock's rooms, a different room on that floor. So I guess whatever Paddock was doing wasn't enough to trip an alarm, but someone else had some sort of security alarm. So he had to go up to that floor to check out that alarm. And he tried going up that stairwell right next to Paddock's room, and he couldn't get through the door. It was blocked from the other side somehow. So he went down, went over, and went up an elevator. And this is where his story gets really weird. And this is the final reporting of his story. But in the original version, the story changed 3 times in the timing of this. Initially, we were told that all of this happened. It was that this all happened after the shooting. Then the story changed so that it all happened before the shooting. But then MGM was like, nah, that makes us look dumb. That makes us look bad. And so they changed it a 3rd time and made it so that this happened in the middle of the shooting. So when we read this part of the official Las Vegas police statement about the report about what happened, just remember that this happened while there was automatic gunfire just erupting from the room at full volume. So he could not gain entry to the 32nd floor due to the door being barricaded. So he walked up the stairs to the 33rd floor, walked down, took an elevator to the 32nd floor. At approximately 10:04, Security Officer Campos picked up a house phone located inside the small foyer leading to the stairwell and called security dispatch to report the L bracket on the door to the stairs that had been barring the door. Security dispatch transferred the call to maintenance dispatch, and the maintenance dispatcher then transferred Security Officer Campos to the maintenance supervisor's cell phone, and he told the maintenance about it. about this tiny, puny little L bracket. This little L bracket's going to be important because it's going to stop the police response for a full hour from getting to the scene of the crime. This little teeny bracket from Home Depot attached with 2 screws. But note that Lombardo, chief of police, described that little bracket as the suspect drilled holes and bolted a metal bar to try to prevent the opening of an emergency exit stairwell door. So this is a metal bar, according to Sheriff Lombardo. Interesting. From approximately 10:05 to 10:16, Paddock committed a mass shooting that left 58 people dead and over 700 injured. During that time, the engineer, the maintenance guy, came up to the floor. So at 10:06 during the shooting, Officer Campos ended the phone call with maintenance and hung up the house phone. After hanging up the phone, he heard what he described as rapid drilling noises. But note that he was in this tiny little room right here, right next to the main suite. And he allegedly described the sound as rapid drilling noises, despite all of Las Vegas being able to hear this shooting for miles around outside on the strip. Rapid drilling noises. And we don't know if this happened before or after or during the shooting because the story changed multiple times. So, after he hangs up the phone, Paddock fires approximately 100 rounds into the Las Vegas Village into the concert. Officer Campos began walking down the 100 wing towards center core. So he hears rapid drilling in the room while automatic gunfire is going off, and he decides that he's going to just walk down the hallway towards the middle of everything. Just to give you a bit of an orientation here, here's the map layout of that wing of the 3-pronged Mandalay Bay building. Up at the top is the suite where the gunfire is happening, and over here by the top at number 3, that's the stairwell and the little foyer where Campos allegedly made this call. And then he steps out and he starts walking down the hall towards the center core right here at the bottom. Just walking away from the drilling noises. Engineer Shuck was told by his supervisor to go to the 32nd floor in the middle of a mass shooting. No big deal. Don't bother telling him about it. The LVMPD, the police unit, broadcast over the Convention Center Area Command radio. We got shots fired. 415A at the Route 91. Sounded like an automatic firearm. Paddock fired rounds down the hallway at Security Officer Campos. So Paddock fired straight through the door down the hallway at this Security Officer Campos. He was struck in the left calf with a bullet fragment. He took cover in the alcove between rooms 32124 and 32122, which is the third alcove down on our right here. He hid in this little alcove, bleeding out of his calf. And there's this weird little detail that came out during where there's all this reporting of pellet guns. Is this where it is? He realized he was shot in his calf and took cover in the alcove. Here's the pellet gun piece. So in certain parts of the reporting, it says another call came over the radio that a security officer had been shot with a pellet gun in the tower of the Mandalay Bay. Confusing. It confused journalists for quite some time. So then, Paddock keeps on firing. Security Officer Campos is stuck, presumably. Paddock just keeps on firing like crazy. He fires at the fuel tanks that we're going to talk about in a second. And then the engineer arrives at the center core of the 32nd floor and walked up the 100 wing, just straight up the hallway towards this room where there's automatic gunfire going off. The engineer heard what he believed to be a jackhammer sound in the distance. Then he quickly realized it was automatic gunfire. After the gunshot stopped, security officer Campos yelled at him to take cover. He turned and took cover in the alcove between these two rooms, and then Paddock fired more rounds down the hallway at him. And all of this was because whoever was in that room had put up security cameras that were streaming the hallway so that whoever was in the room could see the hallway. And they were shooting through the door. Obviously, it was our lone gunman taking a break from his rampage to shoot through the door down the hallway. Now let's take a break to talk about these fuel tanks. Apparently, the police are very confident about the timing and rounds fired at the fuel tanks. The fuel tanks look like this, okay? They're massive. They're the size of a small house. They are located across from the festival, further away, like kind of next to the festival and across the street, over by the airport, because they hold fuel for the airport. What's behind them is super interesting. But let's go to Google Earth so we can get a little view of this, okay? This is the Mandalay Bay, and down in this parking lot is the concert. Over there are the fuel tanks, right there, okay? So allegedly, shooting from up here on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay, he starts shooting with his scoped rifle, single rounds, at these fuel tanks, trying to explode them in the middle of his volleys of automatic gunfire coming from his bump stock ARs. I just wanted to give you a visual as we read this piece. At approximately 10:08, Paddock fired the first round at the fuel tank and missed. Not a great shot, apparently. Of course, he did need a really strong prescription to read, but he did manage to get a bunch of headshots in the festival, apparently. Paddock fired the second round at the fuel tank and missed. He fired a third round at the fuel tank and missed. He fired a fourth round at the fuel tank and missed. First off, how do the police know when he fired these rounds at the fuel tank and missed? And did they find the bullets? How do they know they were even fired at the fuel tanks? In total, he fired 8 rounds at these gigantic fuel tanks the size of houses, and he only hit it twice, allegedly. Little things like this that just like make you go, huh? If you go, huh, you might be inside of a cover-up. You might be witnessing a conspiracy. But you know, whatever. Let's take a brief moment to look at the list of guns that were used. This is the official list with some highlighting and notes taken on it of the guns that were in the room and which ones were fired, which ones had scopes, etc. And right away, you'll notice some weird shit. Okay? This AR-15 right here didn't have a magazine, but it fired 100 rounds. All the other ones did have magazines. That's the least weird one. This AR-10 with no scope fired 6 rounds apparently. Maybe those are the 6 that missed the fuel tanks. Maybe he should have picked up one of his numerous scoped rifles to do so. This round found in room 134 fired 144 rounds. An AR-15 with no scope. He's just out here no-scoping all the way across the street down into this festival, even though he has all these rifles with scopes on them. Not taking time to reload. Instead, he's throwing rifles away and he's picking up other rifles and he's firing them, even if they don't have a scope on them. Now let's take a brief moment to discuss some tinfoil. Because by now, I think we've collectively experienced more than enough little tidbits of what the fuck to question the mainstream narrative and to ask, what's up with these shots at this fuel tank? And everyone has their own theories about them. And, you know, who knows? But one really interesting tidbit to know about these fuel tanks is what's behind them. And if you're thinking that the shots came from up here on the Mandalay Bay on the 32nd floor, then what is directly behind them is this wing of the airport. And this wing of the airport is very special. In 2017, and to this day, it housed landing space or docking space for a number of charter and private jet companies, but also for government jets. And most particularly, right here, though they don't mark it because it's a secret, is where they transport people to Area 51, which is just weird. It's also where, sensitive government flights tend to come in and out of and things like that. So, when shots are firing past these fuel tanks in that direction and hitting this fuel tank here and here, but most of the shots allegedly went over the fuel tank or around it or something into this area, it makes you wonder what might have been happening in the airport when those shots were fired. What kind of planes might have been parked there? What kind of people might have been getting on or off of an aircraft at that moment? It'll get even weirder once we talk about the helicopters. But obviously, you have to rearrange the theory if you think that it wasn't Stephen Paddock firing alone at the concert, and you have to wonder, was the point to blow up the fuel tanks, or were the fuel tanks in the way of something? And then it gets even weirder when you start asking, was it even gunfire coming from the room, or was it gunfire coming from the helicopters? And I think that that's probably a good time for us to take a detour to talk about helicopters before we talk about the heat sensors.
This first one hovers right.
So, flight radar data only goes back 3 years. So unfortunately, it's long gone from us now. All we have are the recordings made by journalists at the time of their flight data and their analysis of it. And so we're going to play a little bit of that. But there are 2 tour helicopter companies that operate out of the airspace there, both of which had some suspicious activity that night. One is Maverick Helicopters and the other is Sundance Helicopters. Maverick is down here at the end of the airstrip, back here. And Sundance Helicopters is more like up here, but it's no longer there. They're out of business. They're gone. Now it's called 5-Star Helicopter Tours. Okay? But we're going to watch some helicopters take off and land from both of these places on flight radar. Where else have I heard about flight radar and about suspicious flights and aircrafts? Huh.
And they're going to stop directly behind the Mandalay Bay. So this first one hovers right there, right over Mandalay Bay, right over the event center, kind of oval-shaped roof. Here comes the third and the fourth. Notice that first helicopter, what happened is it turned off its transponder. These other 2 are about to do the same, and they turn off their transponders as well.
Notice the time.
And they remain there. No transponder signals come back on for the duration of the shooting. So they turned off their transponders at about 9:52, and no more transponders will appear.
The shooting started at about 10:05. So these helicopters got into position over the Mandalay Bay maybe 15 minutes before the shooting started, turned off their transponders, and did not turn them back on until the shooting was over.
In that area. But what's interesting is that even though we have no radar data showing flights in that area, video evidence clearly shows flights being in that area during the shooting. I want you to notice as we watch this clip, the flashes coming from behind and in between Mandalay Bay and Delano Towers.
It's up in this
There's
area.
no aircraft in the air at this time, according to flight data.
We'll watch far more clear video of these flashing lights in the sky in just a moment.
But we see lights flashing in there, which have to come from aircraft because there's no other buildings tall enough for them to be coming from this perspective. The flashes are inconsistent. They're not normal.
Between these 2 golden buildings.
Like you see from beacons or anti-collision lights. So it's possible these flashes are coming from a muzzle.
So you saw how shaky that video was and how much diligence it would take researchers to investigate and to find these flashes. But John Cullen is a special kind of autistic.
Could this be where the shooters are, and that it's not coming from room 32-135? Why don't we see that aircraft on Flight Radar 24? At this moment in time, there's nothing on Flight Radar.
And I'm going to give us one more summary of the helicopters, and then we'll go dig a little deeper into John Cullen's work on it.
Starting at 10:12, a group of what will eventually be a line of 8 helicopters start to take off from Mavericks, although not all of them will show up on radar as having actually left from that pad. This will play in later as the helicopters that previously turned their transponders off put them back on as they escape out with this group to the north.
Notice that this is at 10:15. So this is as the shooting is ended. And we have audio from the control tower at the airport that shows us that the airport was not even aware that the shooting was happening yet. And it was only around this time that they asked these Maverick helicopters, hey, look over at the concert over there. What's going on over there? I see all these police lights. What's going on? And they were like, oh, I think that the festival's just getting out. I think that the concert's just over. It's just police directing traffic.
Okay, whatever. And at 10:16, the same 3 helicopters that had disappeared earlier when they turned their transponders off above Mandalay Bay suddenly blip back up on the screen as part of that group of 8 that takes off up north. 2 of them pop up closer to the vicinity of Mavericks, while a third one blips up on screen between them in the air as they pass by the strip.
Right about there.
Is all 3 call signs from the original 3 helicopters that were behind Mandalay Bay that never returned show up there. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking about the helicopters that landed near Maverick helicopters, but they did not actually land at the Maverick helicopters location where these aircraft took off. They landed over here. So how did they get back over there? And they magically appear back on radar just after the shooting stopped at 10:16. Another interesting thing that I noticed was that the last helicopter in the original group of 3, call sign N848MH, actually turns its transponder on, pops up right there. It just popped up, and I'll show that to you frame by frame here. But it's like it never actually took off from Maverick helicopters, but perhaps
right
left
there.
the
You see it
shooting
appear?
scene and joined that group
Right there.
formation and turned its transponder on right when it got into that group formation.
So what it looks like is that 3 helicopters that had been hovering over the Mandalay Bay with their transponders off, they went and joined a formation of tour helicopters, legitimate helicopters that were maybe normal, that were taking off from the tour base, and they joined into the line and then turned their transponders on to try to blend into the line. But you can see them turn their transponders on, and you can track their call signs and know that it's the same ones that turned their transponders off earlier.
It's also at this time that a Southwest plane comes onto the radar with the call sign SW84119. The problem is it takes a sharp angle turn over the airport impossible for an airplane to do and heads directly over to the Mandalay Bay to hover above the Delano roof. This is only 2 minutes after firing at the festival ceases. I shouldn't have to tell you this, but this has to be a helicopter masquerading under a false call sign, as the original number is registered to a Southwest Boeing 737, whose flight records have it landing later at 10:22.
Where else have I heard stories about false call signs and planes masquerading as other planes and stuff like that?
While both share the same call sign, and I would love to know what the radar controllers were saying about this the whole time, the other mystery Southwest plane on the tarmac's tail number was N227W9 and not WN4119. That's a different aircraft completely. What the hell was going on McCarran Airport that night? This is the part that bothers me, because the only entity I could think of that can get away with entering a heavily urban airspace, illegally turning off transponders, using fake call signs, and all the while being able to escape the notice of radar techs and employees at the airport would be our own government. I guess now we know why they keep refusing our FOIA request for the communications with McCarran. At 10:21, the group of helicopters that previously took off to the north start to return south, and they all land at Mavericks like nothing ever happened. At 10:22, after hovering above the Delano...
They actually don't all land at Mavericks, and we'll watch footage of that, and I think it's John Cullen that will explain that 2 of them don't land at Mavericks.
...roof for several minutes, the Southwest
even be in this
planecopter turns off its transponder. If you're wondering that if despite all the distractions going on that night, if anyone happened to catch a helicopter near the roof of the Delano,
Damn, look at that shit. They got the helicopter right in front of that building. Huh? Look, the helicopter right in front of them.
So it's off the screen above right now. She just had it in the video for a second. Saying, yeah, the helicopter's over the Delano. That's not the freaking Mandalay Bay. And there's a lot of flashing going on up there. A lot of flashing. I don't know if it's too small for you to see. But that's some weird flashing.
Yeah, look, he's hovering over the Delano. It's not the Mandalay Bay. It's that motherfucker right there.
You see that shit?
I think we're safe now.
don't get too excited. Without a timestamp or a clearer video, we can't rule this out as being Metro since they do show up right as the planecopter leaves, and since Metro did take one sweep at Delano's rooftop on radar at around 10:37 for some reason. This could all be solved by simply releasing the footage from the roof the entire night, but I won't hold my breath waiting for Lombardo to be forthcoming about any information that might actually help the case.
That's Mindy Robinson, and her sass is legendary. This is that's a piece from her documentary where it's just Mindy sass the entire time. Now, let's check in with our airport a little bit. And we'll come back to the room. What went down on the runway? That's the room. So, there's a lot of footage that shows helicopters from that night, but detail-oriented people like John Cullen realize that you have to compare that to the flight transponder data on flight radar and see if you can, rule out any other aircrafts in the area, because it's Las Vegas. There's a lot of aircrafts in the area. A lot of witnesses, a lot of people that were there claimed that they were being shot at by helicopters. A lot of them. A lot of the footage of helicopters seems to have flashing that looks like guns. The sound of the guns sounds an awful lot like a belt-fed machine gun that you might mount on the side of a helicopter. But it still takes a lot of detailed work to kind of rule all these things out and track everything. If you're not familiar, classic John Cullen style video where he doesn't say anything. He just overlays music and just lets you figure it out for yourself. But he does a ton of video analysis like this. Time matching body cam footage to other footage, picking out little flashes in the sky that are clearly anomalous. Stuff like that. Numerous examples. And here's an example where he pulled out concert footage and noticed aircrafts in the sky, triangulated it with the flight radar data, and then ruled out and actually tracked Sundance helicopters coming into land, might have been Maverick, and then actually saw other aircrafts after there was no aircrafts in the sky and did a complex task to rule it all out. It's very impressive what journalists did to sort of deduce what was really going on in the darkness that night. So we'll watch a few little clips of this one.
There's no aircraft in this vicinity on flight radar. There's no one back here. So what are we seeing if there's nothing on radar? We believe we're seeing aircraft that have deliberately turned off their transponders so that they are not visible on radar. And if they're not visible, that means they're stealth. And that would explain why we see them here, but we don't see them on flight radar.
And then he even goes in and looks at other angles and triangulates.
So if it's any other jet on approach.
And he asks, is it possible we're seeing jets approaching the runway in the far off distance? And he tracks, he angles, he sight lines.
It's about 9 miles out in order for it to line up with the runway and where this camera was. So it's about a little over 9 miles away. Is that what we're seeing? Or another jet on approach? We don't believe so. We don't think we're seeing a jet 9 miles away on approach. So, and we don't see any jets 9 miles away on approach on flight radar. So there's nobody out there.
I just love John Cullen. He's hilarious. And he's so autistically good at what he does. It's too early to get to what happened at Sundance Helicopters. Oh, the zip line. Oh, the zip line. Okay. Let's talk about the airport. Actually, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the room. Because we've got Paddock in the room shooting all these rounds. And we've mentioned little bits and pieces of this. But in all of these events, you're always looking for something that is, that just the evidence proves it's impossible. Completely impossible. And if you can find evidence that just proves that the mainstream narrative is impossible, and it rearranges the whole case, suddenly everything, it gets you miles ahead on figuring out what actually happened. And everything changes, and you start looking at everything differently. And obviously, I'm only talking about Las Vegas here. But we're told that Stephen Paddock... Do I have my crime scene photos here? Where's my crime scene photos? Yeah. So. All right. Cool. So, from the official report, once more. The engineer is hiding in the hallway. The security guard is in the hallway. He's been shot in the leg. The shooting is going on. And then at 8:15, the shooting stops. 10:15, the shooting stops. The police enter into the stairway one floor below. And at 10:18, the official report says that the heat detection indicator from inside the room where the gunfire is coming from suddenly detected no further readings from inside of the room. And so that's why they say that Stephen Paddock must have shot himself in the head sometime between 10:16 and 10:18. All alone with no one else there. Even though he was surrounded by loaded magazines. He had like 4,000 shots left. He had all kinds of guns to use. No one was at his door. He was chilling. But he just got done with it. He was over it. And they know that that's when he ended it because suddenly there was no more heat signature in the room. Just forget about the fact that it takes a body an hour, 2 hours, many hours to cool. I don't know. More than 0 minutes, right? And so if at 10:17 he's alive and at 10:18 he is, blam, his body's still warm. Little things that make you question what's going on here. So in the hallway, they assemble a strike team. Las Vegas has one of the most well-funded, largest, best-trained SWAT teams in the country. Multiple different units of their SWAT team. And you'd think that the SWAT team would be lined up outside, ready to blast in the doors of the most deadly mass shooting in American history. Obviously. But from 10:18 to 10:41, they're assembling the team. And at 10:41, 30 minutes after the shooting is basically finished, the team they've assembled actually only includes one SWAT officer, which is super weird. It's actually a hodgepodge of a couple canine officers without their dogs, one SWAT officer, Hancock, Detective Walford, and then a couple others join them. It gets reported on in a few different places in the report. An entry team consisted of Canine Sergeant Bitsko, who had his body cam on. Thank you, Bitsko. Canine Officer Newton, SWAT Officer Hancock, Officers Donaldson, Strippis, Walford, Officers Burns and Thiel were assigned to post at the door upon the team's entry to guard the hallway. So they only had one SWAT officer. And you start to ask yourself, as these weird shits pile up, where were the SWAT teams all night? And I think it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that the SWAT teams were dealing with what was actually going on, which was something completely different. So 30 minutes after the shooting is over, they've assembled their team. They're still just in the stairwell on the 31st floor. They're not even on the 32nd floor yet. Then at 10:57, almost an hour after the shooting has ended, they finally breach through this metal bar barring the door, and they get into the 32nd floor. Then at 11:20, they conduct an explosive breach into the room, 32-135. They reported that Paddock was down from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Then at 11:26, 6 minutes later, the strike team made a second explosive breach from inside of room 32-135 into room 32-134 through the connecting doors. Right? This is what we talked about earlier. They had to explosively breach into the other room that Paddock was allegedly shooting out of all night long. And so there's one piece of evidence that makes the story impossible. But let's look at the other evidence that makes the story impossible. If you didn't know, we have body cam footage of them showing and saying that there was no window broken in the suite. This is Officer Bitsko's body cam, the only body cam from the breaching party that we have. And we'll learn in a minute that they were just asked by the SWAT radio, hey, we're looking up at some broken windows and we see activity inside. We want to make sure it's not you. Can you make sure that you find the broken window? Where's the broken window? And they go to look for it.
Where that curtain is right back to the door.
And they go to look for it. He just said, we've got curtains open on a window that is not broken. It's not. Corey. It's not broken. Notice what he's standing beside right there? He's standing beside a chair and a hexagonal table. And he's looking behind the curtains, and he can't find the window that's broken. Right? Is this where I have my photos? Here's where I have my photos. He's standing beside the chair and the hexagonal table, pulling back the curtains, and this is what he allegedly should have seen, is a gigantic broken window with all of this broken glass with 1,000 shell casings on the ground underneath his feet. All that broken glass and all those shell casings were on the ground beneath his feet at that moment. And he couldn't find the broken window. He said, it's not.
Corey, it's not. We've got curtains open on a window that's not broken.
Not broken.
Corey, it's
And you can kind of see that there's no glass, and we don't see the shell casings either. See, casinos actually have special like bulletproof glass that you can't break on all these windows. And he allegedly brought this special sledgehammer to break it, which we see in the crime scene photos. I don't think I have that photo right there. Right there. There's this special little sledgehammer that he used, allegedly. But remember, the crime scene photos were taken the day after. But if the window wasn't broken when they breached the room, not only could he have not been going into the other room, which was locked from the other side, but he also couldn't have shot out of the room because the windows were not broken. So, when you find pieces of evidence that make the official narrative impossible, especially in a way this significant, the whole story has to be rearranged. Everything has to change. None of it works. And then John Cullen did something really cool. John Cullen found a random police body cam of of a police officer sitting in his car doing nothing. But the audio of the clip was the SWAT radio channel. And then he overlaid that SWAT radio channel with the timestamps over the breach so that we could watch the breach listening into the other SWAT radio channel while the breach happens. So you can hear the other side of that conversation that we didn't hear in the last one.
Anybody on the 32nd floor, can you comment my radio? Kevin, go ahead. All officers code 4. All officers are code 4. Keep down. The suspect is down. He's 419. Appears to be self-inflicted.
So then
Is there any more suspects with you?
he overlays them and he synchronizes them. So you see Bitsko's body cam in the video here,
Anybody else up here?
and behind it, just kind of dark because it's a nothing video. Behind it is the other video, and they're synced up in their time stamps.
We've got probably at least 10 high-powered weapons in this room. Sorry, what are you doing there? Kevin, your cop opened up. It's on the 32nd floor. I'll stand by. Give it a run to alert you. Whoever's on that 32nd floor, the north-facing window, is that one broken out also? Units moving to the 32nd floor. CB. We've got patrol units that are clearing down the right. Here, I can't tell you what direction this room is. Let me get to a window and see. Hey. What do you need, Levi?
Notice that he asked, is that window broken out also? Implying that they see a different broken window. They're talking to SWAT snipers outside of the hotel that are looking up at the hotel, apparently.
You guys have a window that faces east. You have another broken window out that we're focusing on, but we just need to make sure if you guys are in there or not because there is a little bit of movement.
We've got another broken window that we're focusing on, and we just need to make sure whether you guys are in there or not because there's movement in there, and we're trying to figure out what's going on.
It's clear. One suspect down. All officers are code 4. Keep pushing. We still don't have to do a sweep for victims. Keep pushing. Get your ear. We are facing north. We are facing north.
They're saying they've got a window facing east that's broken out. So we're a little confused on who's facing which way and on which windows are broken.
So confirming that is you guys that's in the broken window that faces the Luxor.
So we know that the window in this suite is not broken because they're about to go look for it and not find it. But the SWAT snipers outside are looking through a broken window where there's movement inside. So is there another suite with bad guys in it right now with a broken window that the SWAT snipers are looking at? Right? Details matter, right? And see, that's how this like deep level of autistic sparking out yields some crazy discoveries that we don't exactly know what it means, but it means something.
We are facing the left floor. We do not have a broken window. Okay, copy. It looks like you might have another room that has a broken window that also faces the Luxor off that north end. There's a little bit of movement unknown if it's going to be the curtains or not. I'm going to be working to get a better eye on it.
And now he goes to look.
Stand by. We've got curtains open on a window that's not broken. We're looking for broken. Okay, it is that.
And there he said, it's not. Corey, it's not.
We have the broken window. That's us, Jared. Corey, Todd. Go ahead, Todd. If you can raise a CT, ask them to contact the hotel if they can turn on one of these elevators, we can get there quicker.
So, ain't that interesting? Another piece of the main narrative that just is impossible and does not work and actually starts to suggest a whole bunch of other weird things. Last thing we'll do in the crime scene, in the room itself. We'll get to the helicopter report later, maybe. The coroner report. The autopsy that finally got released after people sued the coroner. It noted self-inflicted wound, Where is the specific piece here? There was an apparent intraoral wound noted. There was apparent blood-like substance noted about the face and head. The neck, chest, abdomen, back, and extremities appeared to be unremarkable. Everything else was pretty much normal. Just the head. Blown up. I've censored the gory part here, but I definitely see blood on his chest. A little blood stain on his chest. That doesn't make any sense with the coroner's report. Maybe he got shot while he was sitting down and it dripped onto his chest, or maybe there's a gunshot in his chest. We don't know. But neither of those two things fit with the mainstream narrative that he was shooting out the window and then he shot himself in the head and threw the gun over his head, but then landed with his arms by his sides. Little stuff like that. And then I've tried my best to censor this one too. Oh, my censor dot went away. Uh-oh. Oh, well. Sorry, YouTube. I'll add a little extra censor. But investigator after investigator after investigator has noticed that there dang sure looks to be two different bloodstains here. One that is wet and glistening and fresh, and one behind it that is dried into the carpet. Little things that make you go, huh. In my opinion, the most interesting stuff of the night, aside from all of the active shooters in all of the other hotels outside of the Bellagio, in the Tropicana, at the MGM, at Paris, at New York, in the strip club, hundreds of 911 calls that reported all these other shooters. Other than all that, the most interesting stuff, in my opinion, happened at the airport. But I don't want to just pass over that without giving you some evidence. So let's jump into Mindy's documentary for a quick section where, remember, mainstream narrative, only shooter died at 10:15, killed himself. He was done. Maybe 10:16 to 10:18, he killed himself. But then at midnight, this happened.
11:58 Metro finally tweets out almost 2 hours after the first shots were fired that one suspect is down, but not to go to the strip. Thanks. It's also at this time officers find Mary Lou Danley's credit card in the room. Wait, she left the country without her credit card? That's a little bit more than just letting someone use your comps, but okay. It's also at 11:58 that it gets very interesting. Over an hour and a half after shooting ceased at the festival, 2 separate volleys of automatic gunfire are not only heard by everyone in the Bellagio area, it's also picked up by at least 9 different police comms.
We are not... Oh, shit.
Bellagio, PDR, a lot of shots being fired. We're getting a 415A now, Bellagio, PDR is hearing a lot of shots being fired.
They literally say over the police radio, we've got a lot of people at the Bellagio reporting shots being fired, and then all these body cams catch the shots being fired on their audio.
When they breached, they said one SWAT shot him.
We're getting a now, Bellagio, PDR is hearing a lot of shots being fired.
Didn't you notice that? They said when they breached, they said that SWAT shot him. SWAT didn't shoot him. Right? SWAT didn't even breach. It was just one SWAT guy. You're most likely to catch these weird inconsistencies from the original source evidence right in the heat of the moment before the cover-up can take effect.
That's a shot. That's a shot.
What was that? Oh, right here. Go. Oh, shit. That's machine gun.
Units, we're getting a 415A now, Bellagio, PDR. being fired.
Is that what it was?
415 means suspect with a gun.
Right here. Go. Oh shit, that's machine gun. That's machine gun fire.
Unit Virginia, 415A now, Bellagio, PDR is hearing a lot of shots being fired.
Oh shit. Bellagio!
Control. Keep in mind, there are still multiple reports of people seeing a gunman at the Bellagio at this time.
Lots of reports of people seeing a gunman at the Bellagio at that time. So, the official narrative is that they all imagined it and that they were all just hearing the Mandalay Bay shooter that had happened an hour and a half before. And it was just echoing for an hour and a half. And they're all crazy. All their body cameras are crazy. Crazy. Because if there's anyone shooting guns other than Stephen Paddock, the mainstream narrative is fucking not true. Right? And, you know, it might be worth reminding ourselves that the Mandalay Bay is here. And the Bellagio is not here on the next block, not here on the next block, not here on the next block. It's all the way down here. It's like a mile away. And we've been having reports of gunfire inside of these hotels moving northwards over the last hour and a half to the Tropicana, the Excalibur, the MGM. Sorry, Bellagio is this one here with the sick pool out front. Then there's reports in the Paris. Almost every single one of these hotels had reports of gunfire in and around them. Some of them, like the Tropicana, even had reports of shell casings being found outside of them. Some had weapons found in the street outside of them. Some had people witnessing gunmen inside of them, or gunmen going into bathrooms or exiting out the back door, shit like that. It's a shit show. But one of the most interesting places of all is, where are we? I'm getting lost here. Is the Oasis Apartments right here. So, the Mandalay Bay is the big golden hotel, and the parking lot right there is where the concert is. And kitty corner to that is this little apartment complex called the Oasis Apartments, in between the concert venue, Mandalay Bay, and the airport. And this really sketchy government part of the airport where important shit happens that you're not supposed to know about. And all the helicopter tour companies that take off from over here and from down here. And this little apartment complex has some interesting calls that come in. When you look at the Vegas shooting map, you notice that obviously the reporting is clustered around the shooting itself and around the Mandalay Bay. But then actually, there's a bunch of clustering of things over here in the direction of the airport. And there's a couple of calls that come in at Oasis Apartments. And we're not going to listen to them all, but when you click on them, they do this.
Sunday, October 1,
I guess we'll listen to one of them.
2017, 23:32
They're all like this.
and 12 seconds.
911 emergency, Diaz 9262.
We need police, fire, medical. Hello, Miss Police? Yes, ma'am, we have a lot of that going on. Where are you at? Okay, ma'am.
Listen how she's whispering. You can hardly even hear her.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Okay, you're doing the...
We're at the Oasis Apartments. We're hiding in a restroom by the pool. I don't know if it's this one or the other one that would go on to... There's two calls that come in from here, at least, that report armed men running into the Oasis Apartments, hiding in the bushes and changing clothes. There's also calls all throughout these buildings out here of gunmen running this way, couple of people die over here. All sorts of suspicious stuff happening over here. And then there's an apparent hostage situation at Sundance Helicopters. A woman is shot and they're trying to give her medical attention. They're hiding in the basement while there's apparently a gunman on the loose. And then the runway. Remember, the only gunman tonight was Stephen Paddock, and he killed himself in his hotel room in the Mandalay Bay at 10:16 to 18. But at 10:35, this is a video that John Cullen overlays the audio from the air traffic control tower with video of the flights coming in and out of the airport on flight radar, and then of the police helicopter that was circling over top of the airport that had a camera that was either operated by an idiot or more likely was modified and edited to try to show you as little as possible, tampered with. But he overlays that police video that's pointing in one direction, circling over the ground, while you listen to this audio from the scanner. And at 10:35, this happens.
Shutting down might not be a good idea. There's active shooters on the runway.
Shutting down might not be a good idea. There's active shooters on the runway.
Shutting down might not be a good idea. There's active shooters on the runway.
Classic John Cullen. Gotta love him. And John points out that there's one SWAT guy on his way to the room where the lone gunman is, and all the other members of the SWAT team are AWOL, missing, completely unaccounted for. And we have never once heard where they were. I think John is probably correct to assume that some of them might have been at the airport, possibly securing a VIP escaping, or possibly dealing with some other important situation with some important people. But then, is this where we get the overhead camera?
Shutting down might not be a good idea. There's active shooters on the runway.
Yeah, this is where we get the footage of the helicopter.
And just be advised, there's an active shooter on the airport. This is a blanket broadcast for all aircraft.
Be advised, we have an active shooter on the airport. And this is from that police helicopter. And look at this. There are figures walking around on the runways. And this is an infrared where warm bodies are white and cold steel is black. And what's that right there?
Keep your feet up.
Looks like there's more people over here carrying things.
To the ramp, and the 19s are closed. We are in the process of trying to round them up. They're on the airport proper.
And then they asked to turn the lights off.
I'm getting the information now. I'm talking to like 7 different people.
Tower Mobile 7, can I get you to kill the lights for the 19?
You shut down. We're all stuck here. All right, Mobile 6, you want them on or off?
Mobile 7, I'd like the lights for the 19 off.
So he just asked them to turn off the lights on the runway. But the shooting's over. The guy's dead. Right? Right? Well, there's evidence that there's helicopters flying around shooting belt-fed machine guns at people. There's evidence of active shooters all across the Las Vegas Strip for the next 2 hours. There's evidence of active shooters on the runway. There's evidence of some sort of VIP exfiltration, either from the Mandalay Bay or otherwise. There's all kinds of shit going on out there that night. But somehow, all of that, all covered up. Oh, yeah. And then there's a zip line involved, too. Again, John Cullen just pulling shit out of random body cam footage for years. It's just some woman standing around.
Oh, yeah. What the?
A female police officer.
What is that?
You can see the Sphinx off in the distance there to help locate yourself.
There are buses dropping off at Town Square that are not supposed to be. Can you call Kat and stop it up, please?
This is the pyramid right here. So she's right out front of the Mandalay Bay, right underneath Paddock's room, way up above.
Is that a zip line? Is that a zip line?
And she's talking to someone else with her. John Cullen likes to replay clips over and over and over.
Is that a zip line?
So he's just replaying this one clip. Then he shows some stuff. So he's showing that she's right down here. Paddock's room is right up here above her. She was facing in this direction towards the pyramid and the Sphinx. And she sees a zip line up in the air somewhere. You know, the kind of thing that you could use to escape from on top of a building or inside of a room with a broken window that's not the one that we're all looking at. There's all sorts of details just hiding in all this footage that largely went unnoticed.
It's a person, isn't it?
It kind of looks like a person dangling, but also
It kind of looks like a person dangling, but also...
It's a person.
So it looks like two different people have seen a zip line with a person on it, which is interesting. And the last little tidbit that I think we'll pull out of these camera angles is from Bitsko's body cam when they breach the room and they look around the room, right at the I'm zoomed in here. Right at the end of that footage. Cullen is the one that first pointed this one out to me too. Well, to everyone, is that right at the end of this footage, they say something weird.
There's one right over here by the window that he was setting up with.
Did I skip too far?
player's card that was out on the countertop next to the wallet of the suspect that's 40 feet right. It is a M-Light Platinum player's card under the name of Mary Lou Danley.
Yeah, I skipped a little too far.
Damn goddamn camera
on.
Right here.
I mean, this one is.
Levi, do you have any scoped weapons over there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So they're asking what's in the room.
Because he was blasting out of the window.
Trajicon.
He was blasting out.
I mean, this one is a by scope and a like that.
There's probably there's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags.
The guy just said there's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags. Like for an AK-47. But there were no AK-47s in the room. So why the hell are you loading a whole suitcase full of magazines? That shit takes forever. And they're heavy. Chat says they didn't hear that. It's hard to hear.
I like that.
There's probably there's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags.
There's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags. And you can go look for yourself. Because you can look up this video, Room 134 Breach Bitsko Body Cam on YouTube, published by Truth Seeker 7 years ago. And you can go to timestamp 2910 and you can look it up for yourself. Because that's the beauty of open source primary source information, is that you can all double check it. And so you wind up with all of these little tidbits, all of these little things that add up to a bunch of bullshit, that add up to a story that is not true and does not make sense. And then you have to ask yourself, so what the hell is going on? What on earth really happened? And we could do a whole set of shows about what really happened. And there's a lot of fun stories to dig into of what really happened. Bunch of stories about Saudi Arabia, a real life Game of Thrones, royal turf war, kings stringing princes up by their feet and torturing them, journalists getting chopped up into a bunch of pieces, all sorts of crazy parts to the story, or at least to parts of the story. But we're not here to solve the Las Vegas shooting tonight. We're here to look at the anatomy of a blatant cover-up, of a conspiracy. And when you see things like the story changing over time, when you see things like ballistics and bullets that don't match the story, that don't match reality, when you see things like the media covering things up and telling people to stop reporting and just ignoring whole parts of the story, overtly lying. When you see insider trading, people selling stock ahead of events. When you see people with apparent foreknowledge. When you see the narrative builders telling you that there is no conspiracy and to calm down. When you see any or all of these parts, you should probably start looking at the evidence really carefully. And if you look at the evidence and you find something that just does not work with the mainstream narrative, with what you're being told, you're being lied to. And obviously, I am just talking about the Las Vegas shooting and nothing else. And obviously, remember our disclaimer that the Las Vegas shooting is just a bunch of conspiracy, hoaxy bullshit. And there's rational explanations for everything we looked at tonight. Very rational. Besides, if you talk about it, you'll lose all your social credit, you'll get banned from the internet, and you're crazy. So just shut the fuck up and get back to work, peasants. That's pretty much the line. That's pretty much the narrative. That's pretty much how America goes these days. Obviously, there's stuff happening right now that we all have questions about. And obviously, there's some stuff that's not adding up. And obviously, we're watching closely. I'm watching closely. I'm keeping track of what's developing and what's going on. Obviously, right now, everyone is in Arizona at Turning Point USA having a grand old time, picking sides between Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson, and trying to spin that as anything other than picking sides between Israel and America. Right? And obviously everyone's looking at a certain Erica Kirk and wondering, how does today's action square with prior text messages and statements made by her beloved husband? How does this story possibly match up with that one? What the fuck is going on? And kind of in everyone's face is this issue of narrative builders telling you to shut up, telling you that you're evil if you ask questions, telling you that you just hate Jews. You hate widows. You just want to let a killer go free. You're working for Islam. You work for Qatar. If you do your job, if you pay attention, if you ask questions, if you investigate, do the things that the media is supposed to do, journalists are supposed to do. So, it's obviously up to all of you to decide if you're part if you're in a conspiracy, if you're looking at a cover-up, you shouldn't trust other people. You shouldn't trust journalists. You shouldn't trust people like me. People like me are inherently narrative builders. People like me historically come into the space and flood the zone with opinions and perspectives and emotions and narrative in order to convince you of what to think. And you should be thinking for yourself. You should be judging the evidence for yourself. And if a person on the internet gives you primary source evidence that you can check for yourself and you decide that your opinion should will align with them, then that's okay, I think. But you should always remain skeptical of everyone on the internet, because in all of these instances, in all of these conspiracies and cover-ups, there are always narrative builders that come into the information spaces purposefully to tell you what to think, to tell you not to look over there, not to look over there, to feed in bad information, to discredit other people, to muddy up the waters with just busy work and bullshit. There's a million tactics, and they evolve every time. But the one thing that they cannot counter, the one thing they can't answer, is freedom of speech and freedom of thought. And everyone thinking freely for themselves, thinking carefully for themselves, looking at the evidence and investigating for themselves. That's the whole point. Is it's all about you retaining your individuality, your freedom, and your own perspective. And when you look around at the narrative builders on the internet today, ask yourself which ones are trying to give you a narrative and tell you what to think, and which ones are trying to encourage you to think for yourself and to break free and do your own fucking thing. So, that is our show for tonight. That is just the briefest touch on the Las Vegas shooting. And obviously there's a million more shows we could do, and I'll probably make some videos about what really went on and condense it down into some of the deeper stuff, because this is just the beginning. There's so much more to put together and some really interesting theories that emerged over the years about what might have happened. But for now, we'll leave it there. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for supporting this work. Thanks for supporting all the journalists that came before me. Be sure to subscribe to them, to share them, to like them, to boost them. Because remember, often the people that are best at journalism are not the ones that are best at media and at entertaining and at building audiences. And so often the most critical journalists that are breaking the stories and actually doing the diligence and actually on the ground, they often have smaller platforms and smaller followings and are not as entertaining to watch and are not as good at this. And so it's really important that when you find those people, you support them every way that you can. I pulled clips from John Cullen, from Jason Goodman, from Mindy Robinson, a number of other sources, but those are the three primary ones today. And there's a number of other people out there doing similar work on this story and on other stories. And you should always try to support the journalists that are on the ground doing the work. Because without them, we don't have anything. Without them, we have no information, we have no reporting, we have no primary sources, nothing. Just narrative. But it takes everyone working together. It takes the hardcore ones doing the work, and then it takes the people spreading it out, and then it takes the big people voicing it to the millions, simplifying it, telling it, spreading it. And all together, hopefully, we can get a little bit of truth out there and get people thinking for themselves and asking the right questions. So, now, what we're going to do is we're going to roll out of here. We're going to play our outro, and then we're going to drop into some super chats with you guys. I've been tracking them all night, and I see some awesome super chatters coming in. We'll talk super chats for a minute, and then we'll cut it out at the end. But before we roll into the super chats, I just want to say thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And don't forget to drink some water, eat some healthy food, tell someone you love them, and get some good sleep tonight. And we'll see you on the next one.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous... Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet?
Before we get to your super chats, I just want to take a quick moment to let you know that this stream is brought to you by Buyer. Shop smarter with Buyer, built by yours truly, Ian Carroll, and his team of illustrious rebels, John and Kevin. We built Buyer out of all the research that I had done over the years of who owns everything, who owns all the products in your grocery store, because I had been making spreadsheets that they needed to be an app, and the app needed to be in everyone's phones for free so that you can scan anything in the grocery store and figure out who owns everything. Because most of the stuff that you're buying is coming from BlackRock. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, all the banks, all the financial institutions, they buy up all these companies. They own all these products. They hide behind these brands that look all nice, and they just eat up your money and rule the world. And if you want to support family and founder-owned brands, the first thing you have to do is find them. And it's a lot easier to find them when you can just scan a product and find out immediately. So here's your little ad break from yours truly, because I'd rather advertise something founder-owned, founder-created by myself for you so that you can support founder-owned, family-owned businesses rather than, shilling gambling apps and whatever the fuck else we're shilling these days. So there's your shilling. There's your ad. Go get it on the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store today. Drop us a review. Drop us 5 stars if you like it. We really appreciate it. And if you got any questions, concerns, comments, there's a Discord link on our website, buyerapp.com, BUYRAPP.com. And you can go to our Discord and get support from a wide community of beta testers and people there to help you out. We are in there monitoring as well. And you can drop suggestions for what you would love to see in the app in the future. Because we love that. We're going to be building on it for years. Yeah, down with gambling apps. F that. We don't need no gambling apps. We got Buyer app, baby. So, now on to your super chats. And I actually tracked our supers tonight. I got our super chat tracker back up and running. But before we get to that, let's get some music. Let's chill out for a second here. Is anyone watching the fight tonight? I hear there's a crazy fight tonight. Chat, anyone in the chat watching the fight? Has it already happened? Who won? Who won the fight tonight, guys? The prelims? Yeah, I haven't seen the fight yet. But I heard the fight's going to be wild. What kind of music should we listen to? Let's listen to some chill lo-fi. And we'll turn it down. Yeah, we'll get mellow. Oh, look at that. I got chat hiding behind the super chat. Jake Paul did not win. No way. You're lying. Jake Paul didn't win. That's not true. That's not true, dude. I don't believe it. Is it going to be rigged? Yeah, it's probably going to be rigged. Yes. Duh. Megyn Kelly won. Ben lost. Yeah, the fight has not started. Thank you, at least one person in the chat, for telling the truth. Thank you. All right. Supers. Let's get to your supers. Reagan Marie, thanks for the big $100 super. I am learning so much from your work. Thank you. This is the money I planned to donate when Charlie Kirk died, but I never pulled the trigger. Lol, glad to donate to Truth. Hey, thanks, homie. Don't worry. They got lots of money over there. And I really appreciate your donation. It makes a big difference. And yeah, I'm doing my best. I try to produce media that, if you're like often like the hardcore truth seekers are like, you're just such a basic conspiracy theorist. It's like, dude, the point of what I do is to make media that can welcome newbies in and can spread truth to people that haven't heard it yet. Or if you just haven't heard this story yet, but you know a lot of other stuff, maybe you just need a primer on this story. Someone to explain the, meat and potatoes of this story. I ain't the smartest one in the room, but I'm relatively good at communicating complex stories in understandable ways. That's what I'm good at. That's what I like to do. So hopefully that helped. Thanks, Reagan. Appreciate it. Joel Herring, 3522. $100 dono. Thank you. Do you think Jesus is God? Yes. I'm not an Orthodox. I'm not a typical Christian, but I think Jesus is God. But at the same time, I think that you're God too. I think that we all are a piece of God, right? I think that Jesus was probably holding a much larger portion of God, so to speak. And I know that wording is probably ambiguous and going to piss people off, but yeah, Jesus is God. But at the same time, like, I try to really hold on to the God in all of us, that we're all God's children, and that we're all a little tiny spark of this entire human thing that we are. And Jesus just happened to hold a specifically unique and important point in that whole process. And, people argue over how important that point was and exactly what Jesus was. And I don't get too stressed about trying to pin down exactly what Jesus was. He was important. And his words were important. And you can read all about him. Should I read Revelations 2:9? I got it open. Nah, we're not going to troll Ben that hard. We'll just let Revelation sit over there. Thanks, Joel Herring. I appreciate it. Techie Head with the 50. Ben Avery and John Cullen did a fantastic episode on the stuff we can't talk about here. Your work is dope too, Ian. Yeah, I mean, you can hate on John Cullen, but you can't hate on all the work he did into this. Ben Avery, I'm not so familiar with, but I bet that I've seen his work via John Cullen. There is another channel that Harrison just put me onto on InfoWars today that I got to check out. Real Bays dropping in with a 50. Shout out to Real Bays, always in the chat. Appreciate it, man. I got some uncensored photos of the scene. I'd be happy to send them to you. Just message me. Heads up, they're gross, but I used AI to analyze them, and yeah, they definitely lied about that one. Of Las Vegas? You got some uncensored photos of Las Vegas? Those would be gross photos. See, the thing is, I don't actually know if I want to see them, because we're past the point. It's like, I've seen the autopsies and the bullet trajectories, and I know that a lot of people were shot straight down from above. It would be a little helpful to see the photos. I don't know. I'll think about it. There's some darkness in this world that you just don't have to put yourself through. And my life and my job is so full of like looking at darkness straight in the face that sometimes I'm like, nah, not this one. But I'll think about that, Baze. I appreciate that. And thanks for the dono. Stacey Shepard coming in from Australia with the Aussie Bucks. Greetings from Melbourne, Ian. Love your work. Keeping the bastards honest. You dang straight. Thanks for the donation. Hope you're doing okay down there in Australia. Y'all went through a big one last week. I know that Melbourne is not where Bondi Beach is, but we're thinking about you guys. And BB's thinking about you guys too, in case you were wondering. GBS5587. Hope YouTube doesn't take a deep cut of his money. You're going to see Whitney when she goes on Rogan? Is Whitney going on Rogan? Wait, did I miss that Whitney's going on Rogan? When's Whitney going on Rogan? I want to see that. Hey, Joe, have Whitney Webb on. Volume 2 is downstairs by my bed. Have Whitney Webb on, bro. She'll blow your mind. Not just about Epstein, too. She's all over the digital mass surveillance, Palantir, all that. Andre Kennedy, thanks for the donation. I'd like to see you focus your lens a little on how all of this is in some way aimed at destabilizing American society to cause civil unrest. George Soros has said it himself. Yeah, that's a hard one to pin down. And I try to focus on ones that I can like draw clear lines of evidence between things. But that one's obviously happening. I should do some shows that are kind of zoomed out on the big picture of destabilizing a nation and subversion. That'd be a fun show to try to weave together from all sorts of different sources. Good suggestion, Andre. I appreciate that. I don't give a damn. Axon body cam footage. Axon bought Carbine, Pegasus-style tech tied to Orum's 911 systems. Epstein and Barack founded its Israeli roots. Reporty. Axon's 2025 conference. Israel. Probably nothing with company tats like BH. Axon body cam footage. Bought Carbine. Tied to Orem, Utah's 911 systems? Bro. You know what I should do, guys? Real quick. I'm out here looking across at the wrong screen because I got my supers up on that screen. I should put them over here. And I should do this. So that I can look at them and look at them. I'm probably going to have to rearrange. Oh, yeah, because I have to... Boom. Yeah, now I can look at them over here. Get my screen going. Sick. I don't give a Dom. That's an interesting comment. Appreciate that. Mitchell. I love this show and look forward to it every week. But homie, the plural of aircraft is just aircraft. Love you, man. Love you. Mean it. Hey, sometimes we got to make up words, dog. I've been making up words since I was a little kid. Aircraft eye. But yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Thank you for all your hard work. Thanks, Joan. I appreciate it. Thank you. This event never made any damn sense to me. Best theory I heard was it was a weapons deal gone wrong. Nothing but a cover-up explains to me lack of cameras tracking the guy in a casino. Oh, yeah. Oh, they got camera footage all right. They covered all that up. And yeah, weapons deal gone wrong, I think is probably a part of it. But I think that assassination attempt on Mohammed bin Salman or his little brother or son, Khalil bin Salman, KBS, ambassador to the U.S., I think it's his little brother. That makes way more sense to me. And it might even be a couple things wrapped up in all in one. Like the weapons deal gone wrong might have been how they got the patsy, but I suspect it was cover for something related to Saudi Arabia because of how it's couched into Saudi Arabian geopolitics at the time. And holy shit, that is a rabbit hole that we are going to go down at some point here. It just wasn't going to fit in this stream. Thanks for all your hard work. Please buy Gigi a little something for Christmas from me. Merry Christmas. I'll get her some steak from you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Jason Bourne's wife. Appreciate that. Holy shit. That's Jason Bourne's wife. TXH, TX Hillness. Thanks for the dono. Ty Scene. As a filmmaker, you and James Lee inspire me a lot. Hope to step more into journalism side of things in the future as I learn to ask more questions. Thanks for your value. Much love from West Virginia. Thank you. Yeah, I think filmmakers should step into journalism. Do something about with the information to help the world out, you know? But hey, we need good entertainment too. We need good filmmakers all over. But yeah, there's no shortage of job security in this industry. That's for damn sure. Super Fortnite Kid, did you see the taxi driver's video in front of the casino during shooting? Video disappeared from the internet very quickly. I don't know if I've seen that. I wasn't even looking at journalism at all until during COVID. So I missed a lot of the original stuff that happened with the Vegas shooting. Ian, get in contact with Jake Morfonois about Vegas. He has the goods on this case, so much to the fact that the FBI told him to cease and desist. Interesting. I've never heard of him. Hopefully he doesn't have so much that just like a lot of the witnesses that claimed there was multiple shooters, hopefully he doesn't have an accident like them and dies. Because we didn't even talk about all of the victims that survived only to die in mysterious accidents in the following weeks. Because, I mean, not because, coincidentally, as they were saying that there was multiple shooters. You're being searched on Google Trends right now from Israel. My son just checked right now. My wife ordered me to send you this notice. Haha. Yeah, but I'm like a public figure. I get searched all over the world. I'm not surprised that Israel is searching me. They hate me. Obviously, they're searching me. I'm going to be fine. They're not like downstairs right now. We're chilling. I got a dog. But I appreciate the concern. Google Trends only works for like things that no one would be searching. Really bizarre names, unknown names, specific places, unique combinations of words, things like that. And even then, it's not like necessarily the hardest of proof of anything. FYI, Joe Lombardo, the sheriff who gave the report to MSM that day, nobody believed him. He sounded lost. Is now the governor of North Virginia? Nevada? No, it's not Joe Lombardo that's the governor of Nevada, I don't think. Oh, yeah. What? He is the governor of Nevada. Holy shit. What? Ain't that funny? It always seems to happen like that. And he actually defeated his boy, Steve Sisolak, that was also in that press conference talking shit. It's the dog-eat-dog world out there. You know, don't we recall that he had something to do with Lahaina for a time there? Or is that just a conspiracy theory? Lahaina. It's not on his wiki. I have to dig into that. I remember hearing that. Maybe it's all made up. Ash of the Dead. Think of Jesus. More like a level of consciousness that we're all capable of. Hey, I'm not going to tell no Christians what to think. But Christ consciousness isn't a phrase for no reason. And I don't think I'm ever going to get to that level, but I think we should all aspire to it. Right? Truth evades. The FIT report and how it's only like 40% guns with sights is crazy. It's crazy, dude. That whole report is crazy. The fact they're trying to claim that he was headshotting people from all that distance with no sights when he had sights right next door on his other guns. Come on, man. Come on. You are legit muted, bro. Thanks, Ratchet J. This is when I found out Laura Loomer was an asset. No shit? That far back? Dude, I still look around at the Las Vegas shooting for Israeli stuff. I still look at it for Israeli stuff. Even though there's so much evidence of Saudi stuff, I still look for Israeli stuff. Because one of the factions in this Saudi civil war had long-standing ties to the Israeli deep state. I can't help but wonder. Can't help but wonder. Purple. Remember all the people who attended the event and survived mysteriously died the following year? Yup. Yes, I do. I just looked into a whole bunch of them. Where is John Cullen? Actually, if you want the goods on where John Cullen is, John Cullen, if you want to know the goods on where John Cullen is, you should go to Jason Goodman's YouTube channel. How do I do this without messing it all up? I go to, how do I do this without messing it all up? I drop this one into there, and I open a new YouTube window, and we go to crowdsource the truth. Okay. If you want to know where John Cullen's at, you go to Jason Goodman's channel, Crowdsource the Truth 12 on YouTube. I bet he's also got this on his X channel. It's just easier to find here. And you go to Where's Cullen, Bangkok, Thailand. This whole Where's Waldo graphic here. And he explains the interpersonal drama and the strange set of circumstances that led to John Cullen disappearing. There's a lot of backstory you need to know about Jason Goodman and John Cullen and their personalities and their long history of working together. But I think that Jason's probably got the best sense of where John Cullen is. And you need to have watched that video to have the context of what happened around the time that John Cullen disappeared off the internet. And I don't know, maybe that is why, maybe it's not, but context. I think John Cullen is probably fine. I have questions about who John Cullen is, to be honest. Diane K. Lacey. The way brass ejects, I'd expect to find some outside below the windows. Did they find any there? Thanks for debunking the fake conspiracy theories. Not to my knowledge. And you're right. I would expect to find some there. I would also expect to find the broken glass down on the street below it, not in the room. If he's smashing the window out with a sledgehammer from the inside. But what do I know? I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist. And obviously they didn't just dump all the evidence there before they took the photos. They would never. They would never. Jesus, paywall, sacrifice, freedom. I don't know what that means, Jimmy, but I appreciate the support. Jennifer Grover. Ian, I just wanted to see if you read your super chats before I send more. Lol. Yeah, I usually don't get to all of them, but I think that as people have learned that I never can read all of them, it's trained people to send a few less, and so it makes it easier to read more of them. because for a while there I was getting so many that I just couldn't even read them all. And I do appreciate all the support. I appreciate the donations. They do make a difference. But at the same time, I am doing fine. I don't rely on your donations in order to, get by and eat food. So if you got, like, take care of your people first, take care of your family, take care of your loved ones. And if you want to give a donation, I do appreciate it, but by no means do you need to give a donation. Okay. I've considered turning off super chats many times. But it does make a concise and workable way to interact with the chat here a little bit. And not just interact with trolls. So I don't know. But thank you. Appreciate that. Moogsy, bringing all the info from CO, Ian, Jesse, Nate, Baron, and Milo. I'm starting to think Charlie isn't dead. Hey, Jesse on Fire put together a fire video about that angle of the theories just the other day. And I gotta say, I cannot rule that out. It's awfully QE. It's awfully trust the plan. Like, that very quickly takes me into theories that involve very sophisticated, competent, good guys in the government, which is hard to believe given everything we've seen. But it's a nice little white pill to kind of chew on for fun on the side of things. Personally, I don't believe that's the case yet, but who knows? Things are getting complicated, and I'm watching closely. Interview George Webb on donor Pierre Dupont. I should talk to George. I know George. I've met him a few times. I don't know him well, but I've met him a few times. He's a nice guy. I like him. He's one of those guys that's like does a lot of reporting, but it's often kind of like locked into long live streams. It's hard to kind of piece it all apart unless you watched it all. So it's hard to follow his reporting unless you have time to follow all of it. Blessings to the truth seekers and educators. Thanks, Mountain Star Studios. Yeah, blessings to everybody. More of Team Ian and Candace opening cans of whoop arse. Appreciate it. Always improve your source of information. Thanks. Dang straight. Always get back to primary sources. Whitney Webb is on point and knowledgeable in mucho. Yeah, you're dang straight. Whitney Webb is too smart for her own dang good. Please follow up on 9/11 forewarning audio pagers. Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I think it's getting close to time to do a bunch more reporting on 9/11 here soon. Earth's surface is a level plane. Hey, I'm not convinced of it, and I've looked at the evidence, but you do you, bro. I'm not going to tell you what to think. My point, no brass outside, windows weren't broken. You dang straight, Diane. You dang straight. And I think we missed a few that came in later. Did you see Candace absolutely obliterate Ben today on her show? No, I haven't gotten to watch Candace yet because I was on InfoWars with Harrison, and then I had to get back and I had to prep for this real hard. So I haven't gotten to watch it yet. I'll hopefully go and watch that now. Fern's wife, please make an episode on your beliefs about Jesus. I wholeheartedly agree with what you said and want to hear how you got to your conclusion. I hesitate to make any content about Jesus because I'm not trying to tell anyone what to think about Jesus or about the Bible or about their beliefs. I am no pastor and I don't intend to be one. Maybe way down the line, we'll talk spirituality a little bit. But I just feel like that's a conversation fraught with people of poor intentions, and I don't intend to wade into it regardless of how pure my intentions are. Because I think part of the point of the journey of knowledge and the journey to truth and the journey to God is the journey. And if you just have other people telling you what to think and how to understand and what to believe, you're skipping the journey. And the whole point is that you have to do that journey for yourself. You have to ask those questions for yourself. And if you're the kind of person that's just going to blindly consume what is given to you by whatever book or whatever pastor or whatever influencer, then you're only ever going to wind up wherever they put you. But if you're the kind of person that asks those questions for yourself and thinks for yourself and hears God for yourself and works to kind of take the steps along that journey, then you'll wind up right where you're supposed to be. And there's really no shortcuts to it. And so I don't think we really need people telling us how to get there quite so much. At least not as much as we need people thinking for themselves about how to get there. But I appreciate you. Thank you. I do have a lot of thoughts about it. I think about it all the time, and I try to think deeply about it. But for now, I'm going to keep it to myself. Mama Bear 1995. What if Andrew is leaking stuff because he is trying to help and TPUSA is blaming everything on him because he isn't on their side? Just a thought. Hey, it could be. That's the thing about once you throw out the mainstream narrative, everything gets so complicated to try to decode because we're out here all on our own trying to figure it out. And it's confusing. I have not heard the best things about Andrew from behind the scenes at all, but you never know. Captain Obvious. Not sure you will get time to read this super sticker. However, wife and I truly appreciate all you do. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you to both of you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the dono. Thanks for the support. And I do my best. It helps that I love this job, and it's what I naturally, it's just how my brain works, and it's how I live my whole life. And the pursuit of knowledge is the only and most important thing in the world to me. So it helps that I love it. But I appreciate that. One last scan. Oh, don't send any more. We're done. I'm just going to do one last scan here. Ian, the Bird of Prey by Elbit Systems and Duke Robotics is seriously something to look into, if not for the scary AI for potential assassinations. I don't know about the Bird of Prey by Elbit Systems. I don't know about this. Bird of Prey, Elbit Systems. Oh, snap. Oh, shit. Yeah, it's drones with guns and shit on it. Drones, modifiable drones and shit. Agile, compact, fully stabilized weapon system for drone platforms. Yeah, fucking not good. Potential assassinations. Yeah, you're dang straight. Nice super. Appreciate that. Cool. That's it. We're done. Sick. No more supers. Thanks, homies. Always appreciate it. Always appreciate it. Hey, I just don't... Why'd you send in $100 super now? Bro. No more. I'll read this one last one because it's so big. My father passed in 9/11. Never believed the narrative. Thank you so much for being a truth teller. You have taught me a lot with your videos. I appreciate all of your hard work. I hope us victims will get justice one day. Hey, you'll never get justice, unfortunately. There is no justice for something like that. But there is truth. And there is good in this world. And there is evil in this world. And hopefully we can fight back against evil with some good and some truth. And hopefully we can expose what really happened that day. And yeah, I do think it's high time that we do a little refresher on 9/11 and go a little deeper. Tucker did some really great work on 9/11, but I felt like he went deep on the surface. But there's so much more beneath that to go into. But it's a big one. There's a lot of these big cases like Vegas and 9/11 and in some ways Charlie Kirk. There's just so much to dig into that it's a lot of work to dig them up. Lucky Larry Silverstein. You're dang right, Zyoxy. Lucky Larry. Yeah, 911 is the case. It's the story. It's the big one. And in a lot of ways, I think we're living in, like, it's the world is pre 9/11 and post 9/11. And everything splits there. All of human history. But that's us for tonight. That's our show. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your donations. Thanks for your support. Thanks for liking the video. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Thanks for sharing it. Go out there, eat some good food, drink some water, tell people you love them, do good things, be a good person. The world is made up of people, and it's up to you to be a good person in order to make the world a better place. So do your best, and we'll all do our best. And with that, we're done for the night. I'll be streaming all week on Twitch, twitch.tv/CancelIanCarroll. And we'll be posting some of the bangers to YouTube if you want to watch them there. And we'll see you here again, if not sooner, then at least by next Friday for the next installment of Free Speech Friday. Thanks for tuning in.
Conspiracy theories are entering a information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.